Let's talk about life, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the truth and consciousness, divinity. Let's talk about God. Let's talk about love.
Welcome to Spiritual Nerd, and I'm your host, Ninette Terhart, and today we are geeking out with David Hoffmeister. Hey, David, how are you?
Wonderful, Ninette. It's great to be here. I love doing these kind of things.
Well, thank you so much. And for anyone that's tuning in, I'd like to just let you know that David is an internationally renowned spiritual teacher, a modern-day mystic, author, and a living demonstration of the non-dual path of A Course in Miracles. A catalyst for spiritual teachers and students around the world, David is a brilliant guide for anyone seeking the truth within. He is recognized for his practical application and his clarity about the function of forgiveness in spiritual awakening is unsurpassed, which indeed, true indeed. Well, David, welcome and thank you. And, you know, I want to get right to the mother lode with you because I've been so inspired by the videos and talks that I've been listening to and watching on YouTube. And I would love to talk about something that totally blew my mind into another level of awareness, and that is God is the cause and Christ is the effect. Can we explore that together a little bit?
Yeah. Well, you know, in spirituality, there's a lot of talk about creation, and that word creation is used a lot. And, you know, even in the New Age circles, we'll say the phrases like you create your own reality and so forth. And what we're learning from Jesus in the Course is that God is the creator of reality, and that we're used to, in our sciences and all of our technologies and everything, we have cause-effect relationships that seem to be in the world where the cause comes first and the effect comes second. But what we're learning, that true creation is pure spirit, and that God is the author of reality, and God is like the cause, we'll say the prime cause, and Christ is a pure idea in the mind of God, and therefore Christ is an effect. And then some people remember from the Bible, Jesus saying that the Father and I are one. Basically, that was a way of saying that cause and effect together, that in heaven there is no split between cause and effect. The effect comes from the cause, so the effect doesn't create the cause, but the effect is like the cause in every way, pure, infinite spirit. And what happens is, this is kind of an important thing to know, because if you were just trying to explain the whole metaphysics of awakening, this would be like the core foundation, that God is cause, Christ is effect. And then you get into things of this world, which are more of the mesmerism and the sleep and the ego's splitting off of cause and effect and turning them around, so it seems like the world, the form, and the body are the cause, and that somehow our mind is at the mercy of the world and the body. So that's a real important distinction.
Yeah. And what I loved in that video is, prior to saying that, you said, you know, here on this plane, we have these laws of cause and effect that we, you know, think that are present, but they're all lies. There's only one, and that is God is cause and Christ is the effect. And I was like, yeah, that's a huge concept, you know, for a lot of people that are very much invested in the here and now on this plane.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I was fascinated even about the co-creator idea, that the Course uses the idea of your co-creator with God, but it's purely in the realm of spirit. It's not like co-creating planets or co-creating children or co-creating circumstances and situations. That's just projection. And so that really helped me, because I was fascinated by, of course, like many people, the secret and the law of attraction and how does that all fit in. And you know, it's great to really have these deep metaphysics from the Course, because it kind of puts everything in a proper, appropriate context. And then all of a sudden it gets simpler and simpler, and you start to get happier and happier when you get in alignment with this reality.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a tipping point where you have to really trust. You can't look for physical evidence. You have to kind of dwell in that unknowing knowingness, which is very difficult for a lot of people to kind of penetrate.
Yes, it is. I know, I mean, growing up as a Christian and reading all kinds of books about the attempts to find proof for God and so on and so forth. And then when I came to the course, it was like Spirit saying, listen, I'll give you instructions. All you have to do is follow the instructions and give your heart to it and really apply it without exception. And you'll have so many miraculous experiences that it will convince you of the experience. As your heart is opening, as you feel all this love and joy and happiness, then you'll know for sure through the experience of that experience of love where God really is. But it's different from, many of us. I mean, I was in university for 10 years, so you know how it goes when you're searching and reading, and I was quite well read in a wide range of subjects. But then when the course came after those 10 years, then it was more like I had to just question everything I believed and begin the unlearning and undoing process. And that's what most of my life has been.
Yes, I remember you mentioning a really good analogy of when the screw is coming out of the wood, you can't yank it. You've got to unwind it. There's an undoing process.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it. I even put a little unwind symbol on one of my books. Unwind your mind back to God. A little purple spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we explore a little bit under Christ control? That was a big one for me when I was listening to you talk about that.
Yeah. Well, it kind of relates to the scribe of A Course in Miracles was Helen Schuckman, and the first time I came across that phrase, under Christ's control, was, Helen was a research psychologist at Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center, and a very brilliant woman, huge, like high IQ, really an amazing academic research psychologist. But when she was working with Jesus, it turned out for about 7 years, scribing A Course in Miracles, there came some points of resistance where she just did not want to pick up the pen. She did not want to do it. She just would resist and go for I think the most was maybe a week of absolutely resisting to fulfill her function. And then Jesus would calmly come in with, a good scribe should be under Christ's control. And that's the first time I ever heard those two words put together, because I don't tend to think of Christ and control together, because I think of Christ as this radiant being of unconditional love and nothing to do with. But it was in a phraseology of saying, like the Holy Spirit, I will instruct you, I will give you step-by-step lessons. I will show you the conditions you need to reach oneness or divine love, or he calls it knowledge. But I have to instruct you, and I need you to be listening and following my instructions. And so that's where the phrase Christ control comes in. It's more like the old convents and monasteries. They used to say poverty, chastity, obedience. To me, poverty is just non-possession. It's not like physical poverty. It's non-possession. And chastity is purity of thought. And then obedience is really to your intuition, to your higher self, to call it whatever you want, the Holy Spirit, your guide, your internal guide, your higher self. And to me, that's what being under Christ's control is, really just being aligned with Spirit and following the guidance and instruction of the Spirit.
Yeah. And sort of maybe implementing that every morning and every evening, just kind of re-ground yourself into that space.
Yeah. I had a friend, Kirsten, who actually was driving on the highway one day, and she had to pull over, and she had this beautiful song come, and that's how the song ended, under Christ's control, under Christ's control. But it had was such a cute song. It had quantum physics in it, and it was really sweet. But that's the phrase that it ended with, under Christ's control. So that's kind of it's like a humbleness of, okay, I'm ready. I'll listen, follow you. You direct the way.
Yeah, yeah. I want to read something here. The ever-present miracle of now is our doorway within. It is our doorway home. I want to talk about your new book. This moment is your miracle.
Yeah, that was fun. That's a fun book.
Tell us about it a little bit.
Well, I am pretty much like a talking mystic. So I started traveling around the country and Canada, where you're from, I think, and then around the world. And then people started recording talks and like self-publishing a lot of things. And then at one point I was approached by a publisher and he said, listen, I want to do a real kind of practical book that is kind of in lay terms and introduces people, maybe course students and those that aren't course students in layman's terms, to some of these profound ideas about the living moment. Like Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, I want you to really take us into this moment. And I'd love you to have exercises and use examples and really in a kind of a concise book, really put together something that would really be helpful for people, that will really be like a catalyst that you were mentioning earlier, the real transformational catalyst. So that book came, it was really distilled from a lot of heart-to-heart sharings that I had had, where it was putting it and constructing it in this book as a tool to really reach people, so that when they would pick it up, they would really be taken into it and taken into an experience. And so that it seems to be serving its purpose. There's even some groups that are forming around it and so forth, and online Facebook groups dedicated to kind of working through some of the exercises and working through it in a practical way. So that's how that came about.
Wow, that sounds great. Well, that's the next book I'm going to be picking up. I'm just finishing The Gospel of Astonishment, and I'll be doing James. And I'm like, I just love how I feel like right now there's so many in sync, wonderful information, like truth. It's all kind of like the common denominator is oneness, and this is the illusion and the reality is the oneness. And soon we're going to break through, and it'll be like, remember like the 1400s when people still thought the world was flat, but some knew it was round, and eventually they're like, oh, they just think the world's still flat, but they'll get it soon. And I'm hoping that like in the future it's like, oh, they still think they're human, but they'll understand soon that they're stuck in the illusion, you know? And I just love how all this information is coming in. It's all saying similar stuff, which is so encouraging for the readers.
Yeah, it is exciting. It's very exciting to, like for you, I see it all around, and it's just, it touches my heart that we're part of a generation. And I think there was some teaching that came through Helen Schuckman that was basically saying the world has never undergone a comprehensive awakening, and it feels like we're on the cusp of that. When, like you, I start to see these books and videos, and I see it everywhere I look. So to me, these are great signs that we're having a major breakthrough here in awakening, and then we will be able to talk about this and the same terms you just said. Remember when everybody believed they were human?
I'll hope I'm around for that. That'd be real fun.
Yeah.
I would love to discuss, before we wrap up here, your community centers. I'm really wanting to get down to the one in Mexico. I mean, I'm in Mexico, but you're about 8 hours south of me.
Yes. Well, those centers kind of opened up. A lot of times people start to get into A Course in Miracles or some of my teachings, and they'd say, wow, it would be great to kind of go through some kind of an immersion. And I kept praying on this years ago. Around 2009, I started to say, well, why don't you come, let's do a long retreat. And they were like saying, how long? And I said, how about like 4 weeks or 6 weeks? And they're like, Oh my God, that's the longest retreat I've ever heard of. And so I started off over here in Spain. I don't know why I was drawn here back around 2009 to Mallorca, Spain, where I am right now. And I did a 4-week devotional retreat, and then I did 3 more that were like six weeks, I believe. And people went through such huge transformations because I have so many tools online, and one of them is called the Movie Watcher's Guide to Enlightenment, and there's an online version of it. And people would hear the commentary coming through me as I would pause the movies, and sometimes they would even spring into like a mystical experience during the movie, because the channeled teaching put with the parables and these kind of, I call them quantum movies we get nowadays, like X-Men, Days of Future Past, or Next, or Mr. Nobody. And so I started putting all these online. I'd had a Movie Watcher's Guide for years. And then when I would come together in spiritual community, people would want to, started years ago, actually decades ago, people wanting to live close to me, live in the same house, live nearby, down the street, watch movies together, have these deep discussions like the ancient Greeks, in the pools. We would sit in the hot tub and have these deep discussions. And people like the relaxed feeling of being able to really immerse and ask me questions like on a daily basis, like how does this apply to diet and exercise? How does this apply to these different relationship issues I'm having, or my struggles with the environment or with the government? And so I was really practicing the practical application of the Course in such a deep way. And then these kind of centers kind of grew out of that as a way for people to come maybe for a couple weeks or a month or a couple months to immerse. And there's actually some people, a woman just arrived, a friend of mine from Greece, Sevi, just arrived this afternoon, and we have a friend from South Africa, Catherine, and another friend, Elizabeth, from Pennsylvania. So that's really what happens in these centers. It's just an immersion.
Wow. Well, I'd love to get down to the one, maybe the next year. I'd love to. It just sounds wonderful.
Oh, we would love it, and just love your voice. That one of your music videos you did a while back, I just was spreading it all over Facebook because it was so joyful and so deep and wonderful. So I know you mentioned to me that sometimes you did get down to Mexico with some singing and some different travel. So we'd love to have you come down there.
Yeah, that'd be good times. So David, before we sign off, I would love to just ask if there's anything that you could share to people that are really, getting into that spiritual journey and they're struggling, and something that might help them.
Well, I think to me it's a journey of faith, and it's a journey of expanding faith. And when it seems to be difficult and there's lots of struggles and challenges, I would always remember, listen, Spirit has reached me, and I'm just going to put it back on the Spirit. I'm not going to try to take so much personal responsibility for this awakening journey. I'm just going to say, convince me, show me. You're going to have to really show me, knock my socks off. I remember I said one time in the early 1990s. And then I started to have really profound experiences. So just know that you are not alone, and that if you have a prayer in your heart for help in whatever way that you can convey that the help is there, and you will be lifted up.
Oh, I love that, David. Thank you so much. Your work is tremendous. You've inspired me, umpteen amount of times. And of course, I'm sure I'll remain to be inspired by you. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you soon.
Very good. It would be beautiful to have you down there to Lake Chapala and get to meet you. And thank you for all the work you do. It's just, I find it's very inspiring. And I like that little catchphrase, that's tag name, a spiritual nerd, too. That, of course, is a path, that Helen said for intellectuals, and spiritual nerd, that grabs some attention there. And I love what you're doing. I love the work you're doing.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. Well, I want to thank David Hoffmeister so much for that interview and his time and his work. It was fantastic. That was very cool. And of course, I look forward to the next time when we be geeking out with you.
Let's talk about life, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the truth and consciousness, divinity. Let's talk about God. Let's talk about love.